telling stories of African men, specifically Nigerian men, who have killed their wives, or rather butchered them would be the more appropriate term to use, considering the manner in which many of these women were murdered. And truth be told, I didn't want to touch this steaming hot and very controversial topic even with a 10-foot pole, okay? No way, I said when it was suggested to me. But here we are. Now, if there's one thing I'm all about, it's fairness to all. And I would like to think that I am not biased or one-sided when I share my stand or on anything, but that I look at every side of the story fairly and squarely, okay? And I say this because I've noticed that many Nigerian women married to Nigerian men, specifically speaking for the purpose of this video, okay, are now standing up for their rights more and more every day, which is great, really great. They are now empowering themselves in every way possible to escape the control and abuse by men. The fact is that since time immemorial, women have been victims of abuse at the hands of men, whether it's physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, okay? But over the last decades, many have started asserting themselves against their husbands' bad behavior towards them, using any means at their disposal, okay? And believe it or not, in many Nigerian marriages these days, it's become a case of what a man can do, a woman can do better. With the women paying back their husbands in their own coin. Oh yes, they are. Financially, especially, women are taking back their power and not allowing their husbands control their finances any longer. And even when it comes to the good old cheating, I found out that the percentage of married but still cheating Nigerian wives is seriously alarming. It's just crazy. And you know, all kinds of means are being deployed by many of these women these days to ensure they get back at their husbands, you know, who may have been putting them through all kinds of mental torture for years and rob them of the marital bliss they desire and deserve in marriage, of course, okay? Now, basically, for them, it's become a case of oppression may endure for a night, but revenge comes in the morning. That's what it looks like, and that's what is happening, okay? Now, I get it, okay? I do. I really do. I get it. I get why they're doing it and what's going on. But my question is, where do we draw the line with fighting back an eye for an eye without losing both eyes and going blind? As the saying goes, there are many ways to skin a cat without getting scratched, if I may add. And in this case, without getting murdered for it by your husband. Now that said, another important reason why I decided to make this particular video is that being a Nigerian woman myself, I'm aware of the pressures we all easily succumb to just to fulfill our dreams. You see, the fact is that a typical Nigerian woman living in Nigeria has so many challenges to deal with, okay? These are challenges such as the unstable economy, for example, family expectations of her, and the pull of biology, you know, get married, have kids, you know. And then there's tradition, her ethnicity, of course, there's religion, there's peer pressure, and nowadays, of course, we have the social media pressure, which is getting worse by the day, you know, in my opinion. Now, all of these factors I've mentioned and so many more we may not know about, okay, they all conspire against the average Nigerian woman living in Nigeria, and they cause her to seek her ticket or passport to a better quality of life in marriage to a man who lives abroad, just so that she can move to the US or the UK and start having kids, go back to school and finish school, get a good paying job, and then the story changes, sadly. Yes, indeed, the story changes in some of these cases because she never loved him in the first place. Or she realized after achieving her dream that the man was now not good enough for her and didn't fit in her class any longer. Now, please note that this is referring to some typical Nigerian women and not all, okay? So please, let's get that straight, all right? I said some because I know a lot of other women who, despite these factors I've mentioned, that conspire to make us all fall into the category of what many call the typical Nigerian woman. Despite these factors, there are plenty other women who are holding their own in the society, in our Nigerian society, okay? Now, these women are strong and independent women who don't need a man or the benefits of marriage to a man back there in Nigeria or anywhere abroad to help them become somebody in life. And these type of women, when they do get married, they understand the concept of commitment and loyalty and hard work together as a couple in a marriage, all right? So I'm going to be looking at this. Hello again and welcome to Insights with Chipo. Today I will be talking about Nigerian husbands abroad who murdered their wives, and I will be discussing it from the perspective of the men. Yes, the men, okay? So get ready, let's get on with it. While doing my research for this video, I read a report that said that between 2006 and 2016, at least 10 Nigerian women, 8 of them nurses, were murdered by their husbands in the US. Now, for some weird or good reason, these spate of killings have not reached the UK yet. Although there are quite a few marriages here with similar circumstances and facing the same kind of challenges these marriages must have faced. You see, although everyone who heard or read about these heinous crimes committed by these slighted husbands strongly condemned them, and rightly so too, I believe that in order to be fair and just, which is in no way justifying the crime that was committed, okay, one has to consider the full facts of the case, taking into account all the material details and the contribution of all parties involved that may have aggravated matters. Because truly, in order to get the true picture of anything in life, we must learn to balance the what happened with the why it happened, all right? And this is the reason I want to briefly talk about why these husbands are actually killing their wives from their perspective, which in no way should imply that I support what they did. I do not support any violence of any kind, regardless of what gender commits it, okay? And because there are always 3 sides to every story, his side, her side, and the truth, I want to explore just one side really, which is his side, all right? Okay, so this is really what this video today is all about. I want to throw the spotlight on the why it happened, and it's still happening, and not just the what, okay? And in doing so requires that I point out some uncomfortable facts behind it all. And I'll be looking at it from the perspective of the man. I already said that, okay? The perspective of the man is what I would really want to explore today. Now, I know that this perspective may not be very popular or even agreeable with many, especially women. But please, let's be open and fair-minded. You know, I'm in no way in support of these acts. I'm not. But like I said, I'd really like to understand why this has happened, all right? I'd also like to add that this perspective may not, or rather, it may come across as contradictory and ironic as I highlight the facts involved. But it's all to make a point, please, okay? Keep that in mind. It's all to make a point. We need to understand that these men who murdered their wives are still our sons, fathers, brothers, uncles, or nephews, you know. They are this to someone, regardless of their crime, you know. And these are unfortunate men who, as a result of the chauvinistic African society in which they were bred, they were prompted to react in a way that led to the destruction of a home they set out to build passionately with a woman they made sacrifices for, okay? Now, although the element of provocation that led to it was present and it can be an excuse, it was not justification. Never, unfortunately, okay? These men did not foresee that importing a Nigerian wife, as all of them did, would backfire as badly as it did. You know, they thought that after bringing these women abroad, they would remain subservient and under their control, you know. They underestimated the power of Western societal influence that opens the eyes of the oppressed woman to her rights, you know. The power of societal influence that allows her the freedom to exercise these rights as equals with men, and grants her the authority she thinks she deserves. You see, these are men who invested heavily into their wives by funding their nursing education and also denying themselves some comforts. And for this reason, you see, they then felt entitled to their wives' salaries once the women started to work. And not only did they expect a return on their investment that way, but they also insisted on controlling the income their wives brought home to them. Now, everyone has been quick to call these men all names, you know, all the names in the book, saying they only married these women and brought them abroad with them to use them as money-making machines. Fine, you know, but have we considered that these women also agreed to marry these men just to come abroad for a better life? And because they agreed, they must have been using these men too, isn't it? I mean, isn't it a two-way thing? Are such women any less guilty of the same crime as the men? I mean, there are many marriages like that where both are in it for the benefits they both be getting from each other in return. And this kind of silent agreement and consent, if you want to call it that, is not exclusive to marriages between Nigerians or Africans alone. But it happens with marriages between other nationalities as well. The sun is really hot, guys. I'm sorry. Now, a friend of mine recently told me a story of how a good friend of his was experiencing the same kind of things these men who murdered their wives had gone through with their own wives, all right? Now, the wife in question had called the police on him after she had gotten her papers and was now earning well, all right? She was making good money, all right? And because of that, he was literally thrown out of her house, or the house that they were living in, and was now living rough. In his case, he decided to just leave the UK entirely after a while, because being in the same vicinity with her and seeing her escapades with her new boyfriend in the house that he had paid for or was still paying for could have easily caused him to act on his frustration and anger and murder her. Because when a man feels broken and stripped of all he has ever worked for and is then constantly confronted with the reason why as well, he could eventually snap. Oh yes, that's a fact. Okay? You know, from all I've read and heard about these murders in the US, one can confidently say that these men who murdered their wives were legally and by all means temporarily insane when committing these crimes, okay? This is basically the catalyst that makes people snap. Oh yeah. Temporary insanity, also called momentary insanity, is a legal defense that would argue that the killers, as in these cases, they were insane during the act of murdering their wives, but they later regained their sanity after they had carried out the murders, okay? And normally, this kind of legal defense is used to defend a person that has committed a heat of passion crime under provocation, okay? But in these cases, I doubt if pleading the defense would have worked for these men, because a heat of passion crime is not usually premeditated, and truth be told, the majority of these murders committed seem to have been premeditated. They had been planning it all along to some extent and had just been waiting for the right provocation to trigger them to act, all right? That's exactly what happened. Now, one of the reasons why any court would have determined the murders as premeditated with little consideration for other mitigating circumstances, such as the deviousness behind the acts of some of these women in using a divorce to strip these men of their wealth after so many years of calculated and a deceptive marriage, is because of the women-friendly legal system in place in countries where such crimes are committed, you know. That system will not allow such a defense hold water. No, it won't. Especially when it involves women coming from a third world country that is already known to not only be a male-dominated and chauvinistic country, okay, but also one where there is no real enforceable law against spousal abuse, all right? So using such a defense for cases like these would only be futile, because the law was created created in the first place to protect the rights of women, okay? And therefore would not recognize the element of prolonged provocation, which is truly what I believe these men were constantly exposed to. And this must have manifested itself in the feelings of helplessness they must have felt, and the extreme emotional and psychological disturbance of waking up every day from sleeping rough somewhere perhaps, and having to relive the wicked intentions of their wives, and then to watch it continuously unfold day in, day out, right before their very eyes, stripping them of everything they ever worked for in life. Wow. Try to picture that, man. I mean, try to picture and feel the pain of losing your wife to another man or other men, okay? And the pain of losing your home, which you're most likely still paying for or paying a mortgage on, and your ex-wife continues to live in it, and in most cases even living in it with her new boyfriend while you are destitute. Wow. You know, and what about the loss of your position and power, the power you once had as the head of the home? Oh, and don't forget the loss of your children due to estrangement caused by the separation or divorce. Now, you see, all of this can turn any man into a raging and murdering lunatic. Believe me. Some of these wives even had the unguarded support of their greedy mothers or relatives in gouging these already emotionally tortured men, as was the case with one of the murderers who not only killed his wife but finished off her mother as well. Now, put yourself in the shoes of these men, who could have easily been your brothers, your sons, your uncles, or some relative of yours, you know. And just imagine the humiliation and shame that were being put through by the woman and her family. These were no doubt women they must have loved at one time and supported through school in the hopes that they'd finish, or that she'd finish her studies, get a job, and start supporting the family financially too, since these men had been the ones carrying the burdens all along. They may have even taken out a loan to sponsor their wives' education. And the end of it all, she turns around and decides he's not good enough for her. Or she calls him abusive or unfaithful and now wants a divorce.